Back in Studio West, joined by Jets fan Jim Geraghty, who has been watching the Jets give away a pole position in the draft, and the Browns steadily move up on the draft board. They're now in the third position, and we are desperately hoping for the Patriots or the Giants to win next week. Jim Geraghty, what do you think? Did the Jets blow their chance to get a quarterback? Uh-oh, he's on mute. Maybe that's the fact that the Jets fans have collectively lost their voice. Maybe it's because the Jets fans have decided that their team is so bad they don't even know how to be bad anymore. If you are just joining us and you didn't watch the NFL yesterday, let me know when Jim is back, okay, Adam? Oh, you're back. Jim the Jets fan. Did they manage to blow the draft?
No. As I started saying, and I think you just didn't want to hear me, Hugh. I was speaking. You had your ears blocked. The Raiders and Giants are going to take quarterbacks. You guys also. Whatever happened to I don't want a running quarterback of like a whole week ago? Did the moment it
well, Cam Ward
turns out to be.
Cam Ward turns out to be, I'm told, not a running quarterback. I want you to go over and look at Tankathon though, tankathon.com.
Oh,
we're third. The Browns are third. I couldn't believe it after the NFL collapse yesterday, and the Browns, for a moment there, they were daring to be tied with the Bengals. I thought the Browns can't possibly be as bad as the Jets at blowing their draft position. Now, if I'm the Browns, I play the D squad on Sunday. Do you tank?
You guys have a D squad? How can you tell?
But we're ready to go. I'm all for Cam. I do not want Sanders. I do not want Sanders. He runs around. He's too little. It'll get broken.
So yesterday, so at one point the Bills are up 40-0 on the Jets, and I'm watching the game with my kids, and we're
were?
We go to every Sunday, or we'll go to this restaurant that's got TVs everywhere, and we'll watch the game.
But you can leave, You can leave early.
Down, like early in the second half, we're like, okay, screw it, we're out of here. And they're down 40-0, and I follow a whole bunch of people, including a bunch of Bills fans, who I allegedly they're decent human beings, and allegedly they're good people. I'll give them credit for it. This is the wrong
I have
morning
not had that. That's a rumor and a report. That's
and one
a
of them
scandal.
said, so the Jets come back in garbage time. Tyrod Taylor goes in at quarterback, and they score 2 touchdowns. And it's like, and so one of the Bills fans starts complaining, saying, "Look, I've been happy all day, but can I get some defense here?" And I said, "Look, not only have you guys pulled the starters, not only have you guys pulled the backups of the B team, not only have you pulled the C team, you're just letting kids in the stands come in, put on Bills uniforms, and play a quarter against the Jets." So that's why they scored, right? It's kind of a Make-A-Wish day where a kid gets to actually put on the uniform and play at a game. And the Jets only scored 2 touchdowns against them. So you got to cut them a little bit of slack for that end of the game stuff.
Well, I know, but Aaron Rodgers, apparently they're going to stick with him, and he's managed to get Garrett Wilson mad at him. And I enjoy the drama over at Jetsland. And I just want the Giants and the who's in the first position? It's not the Raiders.
Patriots.
I got to go.
Patriots.
Who? Patriots. They're not going to draft a quarterback, right? They might trade down, but they're not going to draft. I think Drake May wants that Hunter guy from Colorado,
if you're
right?
the Raiders, you do whatever it takes to get that first pick. So my guess, every year the quarterbacks go high. As much they're always this desperate rush for quarterbacks. So my suspicion is that Ward and Sanders will go 1-2. And
that's what I think too.
I'm sure everyone's like, did I tune into sports radio? Don't these guys usually talk politics? I'm fine with
No, we do. We do. I'm getting to it. Here's my political question. On a scale of 1 to 10, the cover-up of Joe Biden's mental impairment, with 10 being the worst scandal of our lifetimes, which until now was probably Watergate, and 0 being no scandals, no ethical problem whatsoever, might have been incompetent, but nothing wrong with Jimmy Carter. There were no special counsel, but it was about his chief of staff, and it wasn't true. Where does the cover-up of Biden's impairment rank?
A 9. If you want to say it's a 10, you can say it's a 10. I can't put it lower than an 8. I think the most revealing piece, and this is a upcoming column in that other place besides National Review, the reporting that Biden believes he could have won the race if he had not withdrawn, and that he just had one bad night, and he's still walking around saying he shouldn't have withdrawn, and he would have had this miraculous comeback. And like, look, we can point to a lot of mistakes that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz made, but in the end, they had 1 point. She was younger, she was energetic. I think she actually did very well in the debate against Trump, and they had $1.5 billion. And you're telling me Joe Biden's going to perform better than that when he's mumbling and stumbling and like, hey, Hugh, you think we're going to get a end of presidency press conference from this president? My guess is no.
No,
Right.
no. We're not going to get anything from this.
Heard of. Yeah.
But did you read the Jake Sullivan? Did you read the Jake Sullivan comment? The Washington Post, by the way. I want to promote your columns. You can name it here. It's not like Voldemort. Okay. Just because I quit doesn't mean I don't read it. So I'll be reading your column. But I want to quote to you what Jake Sullivan had the temerity to say to the Post on the weekend, which was, the president has been operating on a time horizon measured in decades, while the political cycle is measured in 4 years, Jake Sullivan told the Post. He added, how to govern at this moment. To set the U.S. up for long-term success has one answer, and how to govern to deal with midterm and presidential elections in the very short term might have a very different answer. The president went with doing the things that really put America in a strong position. What do you think of that, Jim?
First of all, the video people, I have resisted making some really off-color gestures. I could do sign language for bovine excrement. I could do that one for you if you want. But so I have, so listen, as your listeners probably know, I go to Ukraine. I've been there twice, probably going back again. And I have some buddies out there, and they are not impressed with the Biden administration. The pace of arms getting over there, you can fire it here, but you can't fire it there. And one of the things that I've heard that's always stuck in my head from my buddy Stephen Moore, who runs an aid group helping out the Ukrainians, he says Jake Sullivan should be working at Chipotle. That's the level of contempt he keeps Jake Sullivan in. And by the way, like, if you're a Democrat, how does it feel to hear the president's national security advisor saying, look, everything we were doing, you're going to see dividends. You're going to see it pay off 4 decades from now. Isn't it kind of reasonable for the American people to expect some results within that 4-year window? Isn't that why presidential terms are 4 years? Is that, yeah, you can say you inherit a lot of problems from the previous guy. You can say, oh, it's going to take some time. But 4 years is a really reasonable time frame to expect some return on investment. And the fact
Jim, let's be upbeat. Yeah. Is there an achievement? What are they going to put in the Biden library? Is there an achievement?
They're going to talk about the response to COVID, rolling out the vaccines. They're going to forget the vaccine mandates and the fact that they fired people if they wouldn't get the vaccines. They'll talk about the early response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. They won't mention Afghanistan. They will not. They'll say there was no war between the U.S. and China. They'll try to make it sound like Biden was a hawk, even though he really was on China, even though he wasn't. They'll talk about the deportations and that happened at the very end of his presidency. Right last couple of months before he was facing re-election. And you'll hear a lot about how bad Harris was. And if Harris had just pulled it, what I loved is that, like, the article that says Biden could have won, but only he's saying how everything they did wrong, but he didn't want to criticize Kamala Harris. It's like
there is
I could have done it.
Achievement.
I'm not saying she stinks. I'm just saying I could have done what she couldn't do.
Do you believe that news reporters will press Biden alums on what did they know and when did they know it?
Probably not, but I'll bet we'll get, like, if you're a Biden, if you're Jake Sullivan, if you're a, like, do you think anybody wants to hear about? And then I met with the Ukrainians, and they wanted to strike the Russians over there, and I said no, that would be escalatory. And then they pointed out that they'd fired a missile into a children's hospital, and I was like, well, look, we don't want to make the things worse. We don't want to make them fire 2 missiles into a children's hospital. There's not going to be anything anybody wants to, like, if you're a Biden administration official and you want to write your memoirs, this is what people are going to want to hear about. This is what's going to sell you. This is what we're going to do, generate the buzz. So maybe in the books we'll get stories about, yeah, I went into, by the way, according to the Wall Street Journal article, they were canceling meetings on national security in spring of 2021. Like, from the very beginning.
It's a huge scandal that American history will look back on and say is probably the worst failure of the press in American history. However, So we're going to go to break. I'm going to talk to Jim and bring him back. Don't go anywhere, Jim.
Right.
Don't go anywhere because I want to continue talking to you here on the Hugh Hewitt Show. I'm back with Jim Geraghty of National Review and the Washington Post. Jim, what were you going to say? We went to break there.
So we can rightfully argue about the press's lack of curiosity, the lack of reporting, the downplaying of it. Like 3 years into his presidency, the New York Times said, hey, we noticed the president almost never has events before 10 a.m. or after 4 p.m., indicating that he's got about 6 good hours in him in a day, 5 days a week. But the thing is that certainly by 2023, if not earlier, Americans, like large majorities of Americans and significant portions of Democrats, were saying Joe Biden is too old to be president. And no, we don't want him to run for another term. So it's a cover-up that didn't work. We could all see him. We could all hear him. I was writing about after Afghanistan with withdrawal, the degree to which he was not addressing the public, disappearing for days. The White House records indicated he only had 2 phone calls with foreign leaders in a 10-day period. Like, there was this question of, like, what's he doing all that time that we can't see him? And Americans picked up on this pretty darn fast. So as terrible as this is, and as ludicrous as this is, it was gaslighting. It was very much, Karine Jean-Pierre, oh, he has so much energy, I can't keep up with him. I think it was was it Lisa Rochester, the member of Congress from Delaware, who said, oh my goodness, he's got more energy now than when I first met him and he was in his 40s or 50s. Like utterly nonsense, but I don't think anybody believed it, which is why this is this bizarreness. And one of the really fascinating conversation that will come out of this, Hugh, is the question of what is the 25th Amendment for? If you don't invoke it in circumstances like this, why do you have it? And is there some way that somebody who isn't dependent upon the remaining of the good graces of the president to argue that it should be invoked because in a way that makes it happen? Like traditionally, you'd expect somebody like Kamala Harris to say, hey, the president can't remember what he was told in his briefing yesterday. He shouldn't be president anymore. I hate to do this, but I think we got to step in.
Jim,
And
most amendments, I teach the 25th in con law, and most amendments are fighting the last war. And the last war, when they passed the 25th Amendment, was Woodrow Wilson in a coma, right? With a stroke. That's what they were worried about, a non-ambulatory president. They were not aware of the possibility of a president with mental impairment who had 5 or 6 good hours in him. I don't think he did, by the way, but he's never gotten through one interview without making a mistake. So I don't think he's even had 5 to 6 good hours. It's just been relative to his worst moments. So the 25th Amendment is not written for this because it's so unwieldy and so long and drawn out. It probably needs amendment, but I don't think we're ever going to amend the Constitution again. Do you?
It's tough. You would need a really broad bipartisan consensus. And wasn't the last? I'm speaking to exactly the right guy to correct me. Wasn't the last amendment that Congress can't vote itself a pay raise? That if you vote a pay raise, it takes effect for the next Congress?
Yeah, but that's an old amendment. The last modern amendment, that just hung around forever, and then they voted it in. Okay. It was supposed to be in the original package. The one that is the most recent, I believe, is the 18-year-old vote. I only have one amendment. When people start talking about constitutional amendments, I turn them off because they're so unwieldy. But when we come back from break, I will propose to you the one constitutional amendment that I think might pass. Don't go anywhere, America. I'm Hugh. Welcome back, America. Jim Geraghty is with me. And we're going long because we got nothing else to do on the New Year's Eve. Jim, here's my proposed constitutional amendment. I just turn people off when they say we need a constitutional amendment because you can't pass them. My proposed constitutional amendment is exempting those currently in these offices, no president, vice president, or justice of the Supreme Court, or chief justice of the Supreme Court shall serve beyond their birthday, period. What do you think?
What number are you envisioning X?
Either 75 or 80.
Okay. I think, marking the passage of Jimmy Carter at age 100, and the fact that we are next month going to nominate a 78-year-old president who will turn...
You mean inaugurate? Inaugurate.
Yeah. Inaugurate, yeah. That this is going to be a real issue for America. Like, the good news is human lifespan is getting longer, and the longer you are in public life, the more name recognition you have, and it probably helps you to be a really well-known figure with a long record of accomplishments. And that's, one of the reasons we've had, I would say 3 old presidents in a row, but really I mean 2, but like 3 terms of very old presidents. And also remember, who was the last guy who Joe Biden beat in the 2020 primary? Bernie Sanders, the one guy who could say both these guys are youngsters, we are in an era where as much, Nancy Pelosi, she's not speaker, but clearly she's still pulling the strings of the Democratic Party. You look at the committee chairs. Yeah, the Democrats replaced a few ranking members who were younger, but they still have a bunch of, Maxine Waters is still there and all that stuff. We have a geriatric governing class. The issue with the congresswoman from Texas, who was in the retirement.
A Republican, Kay Granger.
Okay, thank you. This is a real problem. The people who hang on, Dianne Feinstein, people who hang on in public office long after they shouldn't, and staffers who are dependent upon that lawmaker, who you think would be the ones who would say, it's time for, the person should be in a home, not in the house. That kind of, but they weren't willing to do it. So it may require some sort of that. And it's my attitude towards the recent spate of bad pardons we've seen from and commutations from Biden. I'm now open to a discussion about limiting the president's pardon power, because it used to be norms, social standards, fear of scandal or negative reaction. All of that would be a check on bad decision making in this. You'd think a person would be like, well, wouldn't it be embarrassing to be a U.S. senator or a member of the House and not able to do the job because you're mentally and physically no longer capable? And clearly that's not an issue. Now here's the thing. Chuck Grassley, he's 90, I want to say, and he's, still
91.
91, 91. Right? But the problem with the age limit is that occasionally you'll get somebody who's really still spry and mentally sharp.
And they should serve in the Senate. They should serve in the Senate or the House, because it's not they're deliberative bodies, they're legislators. Yeah, one of 100 or one of 435. But with justices, presidents, and vice presidents, and Trump, by the way, can make this amendment because he's a uniquely energetic individual, and he's not in any kind of decline. You might not like him. I know a lot of people listening don't like him, but there's no question about he's the same Donald Trump that he was 40 years ago. And by the way, I have a clip from Letterman in 1987, which I'm going to play in the long segment at the bottom of the hour. There just isn't any question he's got the energy. He could propose this amendment. Do you think it would pass? Exempting current occupants of these offices, no president, vice president, or justice, Supreme Court, or chief justice shall serve beyond their 80th birthday. You think that would get the necessary number of states?
No pun intended. If you grandfather in the ones who are in place, I think you'd get it. I think that there's enough Americans who are concerned, and there are enough recent examples. Biden would be the most vivid and demonstrated one. But look, we have a president who isn't there. I think there was the president who isn't there was Peggy Noonan's title of her column this past weekend, comparing Biden to Woodrow
Fine
Wilson.
column. Yeah.
You have the vice president who disappeared for long stretches as well, and who apparently didn't like to do interviews and was hidden from the press for long stretches. You have the Secretary of Defense who went off to have cancer. I hope he's doing surgery. I hope he's doing really well. God bless him. I hope Lloyd Austin lives to be 100 and lives to be healthy. But he was off, and nobody knew where he was. Who's running the show? How many government officials in a row in the chain of command can you have it accessible and not like? And the funny thing is, it's not like I feel like. It feels like almost like we need Big Brother. Like this idea, I mean the game show, not Orwell. The idea of these cameras watching people, because when we can't watch them, what are they up to?
One more segment with Geraghty coming up, America. Don't go anywhere, but I want to finish the conversation. He just said my constitutional amendment might pass. I have an addendum that I wonder if it'll get over the hurdle. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Jim Geraghty. I want to add one more line to my proposed constitutional amendment and ask you whether or not it would kill it. And the number of justices on the Supreme Court is fixed at 9. Now, I happen to believe there's a good argument that it's already unconstitutional to expand the court. Good argument, untested. And people will say, well, they expanded the court after the 14th Amendment. But I don't think that would answer my objection about overturning the rule of law, which an expansion of the court clearly would, and was understood to be when FDR proposed court packing in 1938, and it was roundly rejected by both parties. But I do worry that uber partisans, when Democrats return, and they will get back to the White House eventually, are going to blow up the filibuster and expand the court after 4 more years of Roberts Court decisions. What do you think about fixing in the fine print the court is 9, and we mean 9, not 8, not 10?
Is it safe to assume, Hugh, you want these as separate constitutional amendments?
No, I was going to then. I don't think this would have any chance standing alone. But if you join it with the age limits, it might get over.
First of all, I think you actually would get wide public support. Whether you'd get enough in every state legislature that would need to ratify it is maybe an open question. But whatever offense is there, we should be looking at why did Chesterton put it there, and that question so why was there such a strong reaction to FDR attempting to pack the court? Why is there this instinctive reaction when somebody says, well, we're not getting what we want from the court, so we're just going to add more justices and we'll vote the way we want, right? Why does that offend us so? Why does that bother us so? It's because the whole concept of our government is checks and balances. And the moment the president and a like-minded, Senate majority can start popping out new justices like a Pez dispenser, well, then you've eliminated the checks and balance. The Supreme Court no longer is a useful tool to say to the president and legislature, nope, sorry, you can't do that. You have violated the Constitution. Right? My former colleague Kevin Williamson once said, he won over a crowd, I think on the Bill Maher program, back in the bad old days, where he said, everything in the Bill of Rights is everything that's so important, you idiots don't get to vote on it. And it's a really kind of, the idea, because we believe in democracy. We believe that, the people's will, the people should speak, the people should get what they want. And what's fascinating is that our Constitution is set up no, there are a handful of things that you, the majority, don't get, even if you really want it very badly. You don't get to abrogate the First Amendment. You don't get to do away with the Second Amendment. No, you can't just ignore it, even though a lot of jurisdictions effectively did before the Heller decision. You can't, the Fourth, all these things that are in there, we make it really hard to change this almost impossible ability to change the Constitution, because there are certain things that we know that the public gets these things wrong every now and then. We know that there are public frenzies. We know some people would argue the Patriot Act was that. Some people, a terrible disaster happens and people want to do something about it, and they enact changes that are actually very bad in retrospect. So that's why we have the system that we do. When people complain how hard it is to pass legislation, yes, that's the point. It's supposed to be hard.
Yeah, the Constitution is anti-majoritarian. I spend 30 classes explaining that again and again. The Constitution is anti-majoritarian. I want to close here, Jim. I don't believe any constitutional amendment will ever pass, and I don't believe this is a priority. But should someone drop something like this in the hopper to begin to consider it?
Yeah, the lesson of constitutional amendments is that, they take a while, and you have to, what it takes is to change the Constitution, you need a really big consensus. You need to convince, not quite everyone, but you need to convince a large majority of Americans, and it's reflected through the number of states and the number of state legislative majorities you would need. And you need to get started on it, and you need to have a patience, and you need to be willing to accept the fact that it may not succeed the first time. There are probably some elderly state legislators out there who don't think it's such a good idea to put in an age limit for certain jobs. But people always point out that there's a reason we have age limits for commercial airline pilots, and you don't want the elderly commercial airline pilot making a terrible mistake that costs people lives. Same thing, you don't want an elderly president making decisions that will cost somebody their lives. And also, look, I've never related more to Ruth Bader Ginsburg than that time she fell asleep at the State of the Union. But in the end, if you're the kind of person who can't function after, was it 8 p.m., 9 p.m., you probably should not be one of the 9 most important people in terms of determining what is constitutional and what is not. But
there's a First Circuit vacancy. There's a First Circuit vacancy that I'd like to have, but I'm 69. I'm not going to be it. Jim Geraghty, thank you. I'll look for your post article later today, and I'll read you at the Morning Jolt. Jim Geraghty on X.